Japan has become a major player in the sport of rugby union. The vast amount of money they have made available to the game has seen their domestic league explode and seen more and more Tier 1 international matches take place in the country. In 2019, Japan topped their pool for the first time ever at their home World Cup. Merited victories over Ireland and Scotland in front of packed crowds had the rugby world rocking. Finally, we had a disruptor to the old boys club of the Tier 1 nations. It came off the back of an earth-moving win over the Springboks 4 years earlier, arguably the biggest shock in rugby history. Since their win over Scotland, however, Japan have lost 15 consecutive tests against Sanzar and Six Nations sides. Last week, they shipped 50 points at home against England in front of a stadium that was just a little over 2/3 full. The game wasn't even broadcast globally. Were we wrong? Was 2019 a false dawn for the land of the rising sun?
Japan is almost unique in rugby, as it is one of the few places in the world where, from the outside at least, money doesn't appear to be an issue.
Japan League One, their top tier of domestic rugby, has been a roaring success, drawing crowds in the tens of thousands per game to see some of the world's biggest stars perform on their doorsteps. In its first year, Japan League One generated surplus revenue. This season, it has seen more than a 35% growth in attendances, smashing past the 1 million mark for the first time in its history. Japan's club model means the teams are backed by huge multinational corporations such as Panasonic and Toshiba, who are able to sustain huge levels of investment in the playing staff that almost no one else in the world can match.
Of the players who took to the pitch in the 2023 World Cup final, no fewer than 13 played their club rugby in Japan this season.
It has become almost expected that top-line All Blacks will spend their sabbatical season in Japan, earning wages that far outstrip what they could earn in Super Rugby. Sometimes it goes even further than that. In 2023, All Black fly half Richie Mwanga, arguably his country's most gifted player, signed a 3-year deal with Toshiba Brave Lupus, effectively ending his international career aged 29. The potential income on offer in Japan has not gone unnoticed by Super Rugby. They did try to add a Japanese franchise to the league in 2017, but ultimately this failed. That relationship is now almost reversed, as Kiwi sides have started organising games against League One opposition this season and plan to do so more regularly in the future. In fact, the proposed Club World Cup is rumoured to be looking at including 2 sides from Japan, which could end up being more than from either Ireland or South Africa.
And yet, all of this good news for the domestic game has not led to improvements for the national side. In fact, if anything, results are going backwards.
The pandemic meant they didn't play any international rugby for almost 2 years after their quarter-final defeat to the Springboks. In the following 3 years, they have won just 6 games, the highest ranked defeated opponent being Samoa, rated 14th in the world at last year's World Cup. Whilst there have been a couple of respectable scorelines against heavily rotated French and All Black teams, they look a shadow of their 2019 selves.
It's not as if they've been given unfavourable fixtures either. Of their 23 matches since 2021, 11 have been at home and 3 have been at neutral venues.
So what has caused this sudden drop-off? Recently reinstated national coach Eddie Jones places the blame with Japan League One itself. The league, according to Jones, whilst is entertaining, is not necessarily representative of international rugby. It is true that Japanese rugby has its own unique flavour, as League One commentator Dave Rogers explains to the Pirate Rugby podcast.
In terms of the style of play, hardly any box kicks. Yes, they'll catch and drive from the line out, 5-10 metres out, but if it doesn't go over maul-wise first phase, they'll go edge to edge. There's none of this Exeter Chiefs pick and go, pick and go, pick and go, wait for the advantage, pick and go, try. They just play off the cuff. It is loose, it is fun, it is high skill level. It's not as physical as a South African team in the URC or one of the top 14 teams.
Jones also cites the league's reliance on foreign talents, nearly half of all players are born outside of Japan, and a lack of pathway from school to professional level as reasons for the national side's stunted growth. Now, there are rules in Japan to limit the influx of foreign players, as Dave explains.
Players are cut up into 3 categories. You've got a category A, which is a Japanese eligible international. You've got a category B, which is a foreigner who hasn't been capped for their country, who could potentially be capped for Japan in the future. And you've got a category C, who is, your rock stars, your Lou Diagas, your Cheslin Colbys, your Peter Steph-Toys, Ardy Surveyors, Aaron Smiths, etc. So 80% of your squad has to be category A's. You're allowed, in your entire squad of 40, 50 odd or whatever, you're allowed up to 9 foreigners, but you're allowed no more than 3 category C's. That's usually what squads do. They'll have 6 category B's and 3 category C's.
It should be noted that Jones himself is not a unanimously loved appointment. He may have masterminded the miracle in Brighton, but that was almost a decade ago. Since then, he has been sacked by England and led Australia to the most disastrous World Cup campaign in their history. Meanwhile, Japan's women's team is much harder to judge. The women's international calendar is shorter than the men's, and Japan do not get much variety in opponents. They have played just 7 different teams since the start of 2023, 2 of those coming at the new WXV2 tournament. There is also much more overlap with the sevens in women's rugby, where Japan have qualified for the 2024 Olympics in Paris.
World Rugby clearly see Japan as a vital market for the sport's growth. Japan is the 4th largest economy in the world and the largest of any Tier 1 rugby playing nation. Japan is expected to be a founding member of the new Nations League in 2026, whilst the new Pacific Nations Cup format will see its finals hosted in Japan, a role Japan will alternate with the USA.
World Rugby will no doubt then be hoping that Japan achieve a better performance than they did last year, where they won just 1 out of their 3 games, a scrappy win over Tonga, despite playing all 3 fixtures at home, the only team to do so. If you like this video, please consider subscribing to the channel, and thank you for watching.